Hey Unexplained Ones, this is Dr. Mounts, and thanks for tuning in to All Things Unexplained, where we talk about everything from Bigfoot to UFOs to astrophysics and everything in between. So if that sort of thing's for you, make sure to follow us wherever you podcast, along with a review and a rating. It takes a lot to get All Things Unexplained on the air, and this podcast is made possible by listeners like you. You can support the show by checking us out on Linktree at ATU Podcast. That's ATU Podcast. There you'll find links to all our socials. You can support us on Venmo. You can purchase your official All Things Unexplained merchandise, and you can even book us on Cameo. And now, let's get to the show.
All Things Unexplained, hosted by Dr. Mounts.
Let's face it, we were always ready to roll without him anyway.
CJ Derringer.
Ain't nobody perfect, right?
And Smitty Neebs.
I've never planned out hardly anything my whole life. I just freeball.
Featuring Cajun Man.
I'm just old nobody, somebody looking for somebody.
Previously on All Things Unexplained.
Sometime in the middle of the night, I wake up, I see a blue light coming from the living room. We don't have any blue lights in the living room. And then I wake my wife up and ask her if she sees the blue light. She says yes. And I said, well, I'm going to have to go check it out. Could be a burglar. So I try to get up off the bed, and all of a sudden I'm paralyzed. I can't move. I remember struggling intensely. This was not a dream, because I remember struggling intensely to get my mobility back, couldn't move. I turned to my wife and asked for help, and she now was unconscious. So next thing I realized is there's an odd, looks like someone in the bedroom door with a hood on. I can't make out the face. In fact, it seemed to me like it was blackened, or I just couldn't make out any face. And after that, I'm aware of what I think of are small children in the room. That's the way they seemed to me. And again, I don't recall what they looked like, except that they were small. I'm lifted off the bed and taken towards the window. I think to myself, these children won't know how to open the latch. I lock the window. They take me right through the window. I know that sounds ridiculous, but that's what happened. Take me right through the window. Next, I'm currently on board a craft, lying on a table, and I'm being shown a needle, a long needle, with long bony fingers being held right in front of my eyes. They want me to see this needle. They say telepathically again, we're going to insert this into your groin area. It's not going to hurt. Well, they started to do that, and it was very, very painful. I expressed that. It was very painful, and all of a sudden the pain goes away. Presume they took a sample of sperm. After that, they set me up on the table. There were two small beings on either side of me that escorted me to an area that was built into the side of the craft, like a bench area. They sat me down, and they took me over to another area where appeared to be a doctor or a nurse, turned me around and poked their fingers down my spine like that. That was it. Then they escorted me through a curved hallway. And again, I was not walking, I was floating around a curved hallway, and then bright white light, and I was back in my bed.
Do you think that the government created this program as like a wag the dog sort of situation, that it's just a show. They've got some very intelligent minds working on these things over here while they're actually doing really big things over here. If they're having such trouble connecting with other government agencies.
Well, this goes back to the cabal that I was talking about. The people within intelligence agency, the people that are involved with this cabal, which is this group that's bent on keeping these secrets, are individuals. It's like, for example, CIA. Let's take CIA, for example. I'm sure there are people within CIA that are very knowledgeable about UFOs, and then others that the great majority of other agents in CIA are not. So I don't know if that helps answer your question, but it's a very complex, secretive thing we're dealing with. If on the public side, we're going to have a tough time breaking into that cabal group and getting real information.
Absolutely. And right after the spy balloon, we entered just uncharted territory in American history over Super Bowl weekend, where breaking news, we shoot down 3 unidentified flying objects, one over Canada, one over Alaska, one over Lake Huron. And that's just where it's at even right now. This was over Super Bowl weekend. And
Yep.
no pictures,
Yeah.
no videos, no explanations. They even attempted to blame one of them on a like a child's Pico balloon, which we talked to the Pico balloon folks, and we determined that just was not feasible, that they blasted down a very tiny Pico balloon that everybody could log onto their computer and track. So, uh, Bob, what do you make of this historic situation where we're acknowledging we're shooting down UFOs, but we're not finding out anything about them?
Well, you and I aren't. Somebody is. And again, this goes back to the excessive and extreme secrecy. Another aspect of the two books, the last 2 books. The public has a right to know about the UFO phenomenon because the government has been hiding these secrets for over 70 years, and we need to know what our government is doing. It's part of our democratic principles that the public be informed in order to know whether we want our government to, like you say, shoot down these objects or welcome them or something. I mean, else, this is a complex situation, and the public needs to have more information. And there's people out there that are just bent on secrecy, and that needs to change. And that's why I'm so pumped up to keep pushing for disclosure.
Right.
So,
And one thing I noticed on social media, Bob, is that you were not exactly very pleased with the amount of disclosure that happened during the latest UFO hearing, but
no.
they did tease us with a video that a very, very short clip that when CJ and I saw it, we instantly said, "Oh, the Mosul orb." But it actually turned out it wasn't the Mosul orb. I'm sure you know
Yeah,
this, but
well,
this ties back to Jeremy Corbell and something he released, and who he's become kind of the authority in lieu of the government on such things. But now here they are releasing something, and without giving him any acknowledgement whatsoever, by the way. But here's this orb, right? So what did you make, one, of
well,
the hearing, and two, of this very quick snippet of an orb over a war zone?
yeah. I'm writing. I just finished writing the part 2 of my analysis of Arrow and that hearing in particular. I wrote part 1 and published it on a website. If you go to my Twitter feed, you can link to that website and read what I wrote. It was about 4 or 5 pages. The second one, is about 6 pages long. But I go into quite a lot of detail on critiquing that so-called testimony. Let me just say that they could have shown any number of other videos, and I'm not talking about the Tic Tac videos, but many other videos of UFOs. I could provide them with at least 2 or 3 that are authentic and would bring up many more questions than the one they showed. So yeah, I thought it was a farce. I thought it was not educational at all. You know, I think most of us knew everything Kirkpatrick said. What disappointed me was that there were only 3 senators, and none of them pursued questions after he made his statements, such as the statement he made about they have found no evidence of an extraterrestrial presence or an advanced technology, and that's completely false. There is plenty of evidence of advanced technology. Like I said, there have been even technical analyses, one done by Bruce Maccabee, where he was able to determine the speeds and g-forces of these objects. There's a lot of evidence, like the statement that I just gave you, about how these objects operated, and we have no equipment that can do what they can do. So the calculus is very simple about extraterrestrial. If they find, or if we find that there's nothing on Earth that has been produced or can be produced to do what they've done, been observed doing, then these things must be produced off Earth, extraterrestrial.
Right. You know, one thing I keep wondering, DOD seems to lump most of these incidents into weather balloons or meteorological effects and other
Mhm.
mundane types of things. So where does NASA come into any of this? And if we are to believe that this is all weather balloons and satellites and junk, and why does why is there even a need for a NASA investigation of UFOs?
Well, actually, NASA is going to have a conference, I think, teleconference. I think it's soon, this weekend, maybe. You might want to check up on that, where they're going to talk about UAP. But I think they're one government agency that seems to want to delve into this and discuss it in more detail. But NASA, what they won't talk about probably is the fact that many NASA astronauts have talked about seeing these objects.
Mm.
John Mitchell, there's been others who have talked about the reality of UFOs and have actually seen them.
Wow.
And you probably won't hear NASA talk about that.
That's not
I'm
coming on this
guessing not.
weekend, huh? Maybe they will. Who knows? We'll have to dive deeper into those NASA astronaut sightings. That's pretty neat. We've done a lot of talking about astronauts and moon landings, and
Hmm.
is there a spaceship on the other side of the moon? We have lots of things to wonder about. But I regress back to the current topics, Tim.
Well, we do have a great listener question for you, Bob. Listener Mark Smith wants to know, do you have any opinions on what planet or galaxy or other, where exactly are these things coming from?
I have no idea. What uh, what is interesting is during the Barney and Betty Hill case abduction, Betty was shown a map of stars where they came from. I don't know if you're aware of that, but anyway, you may or may not be aware that the Obamas have a documentary film production that is going to delve into the Betty and Barney Hill case, and that should be out
Really?
next year. Yeah, but
I was
anyway,
not aware of that. You're right.
Betty recalls this star map and she talked to an astronomer about it, and they were able to determine which galaxy, not I don't know if it was galaxy or a star system is part of our galaxy. But that's the best I can do for you. I have no idea exactly where they come from.
Reminds me a little bit of the star map that Travis Walton talked about on
Oh,
the
hmm
spacecraft that he was on.
Absolutely.
Mm.
CJ, do you think we're ready to get into some hot takes maybe with Mr. Salas
Yes,
real quick?
absolutely. Before we do, I just want to say, we all need people like Mr. Salas doing what he is doing. This is certainly a passion project for him, and he keeps going. For whatever reason, you just keep diving in further and further, right? It just is so has become all encompassing for you. So let's make sure that we do support him and check out those books on Amazon that you can purchase, and we can all educate ourselves a little bit more about what's going on. So again, go visit his Amazon page and pick up those books. And yes, now hot takes.
All right, Miss Salas. So I've just got a few things here. Just want your hot take on them. What's your thought on ancient aliens? The possibility that aliens have been around for
Oh,
millions of years.
very possible. I find that very possible. Let's see, 2 summers ago, I went to Italy and went to this museum where we saw a painting of the Madonna with a UFO in the background, clearly a UFO-shaped object. It had people in her background pointing at it and things like that. And this was painted in the 15th century. I have little doubt that ETs have been visiting for a long, long time.
I'm a firm believer, actually, that all of the UFO incidents and extraterrestrials basically is supported by what the Bible and other religious texts tell us. So I don't think that they're necessarily contradictory, even though people can take it that way. Now,
Mhm.
what's your hot take, Mr. Salas, on perhaps the most famous UFO incident of all time, which happened in 1947 in Roswell,
Mhm.
New Mexico?
Yeah, absolutely. There were over 300 civilian witnesses that have come forward in one way or the other and backed up the stories. I have no doubt that there were two crashes, actually, one near Corona and the other one further away. And these were spoken about by Stanton Friedman. He wrote about both of them, and that bodies were found in both cases. There's plenty of evidence to that. Plenty of witness evidence. So absolutely, it happened. And this is the one thing that, again, we have to press the Aero Group and government to release information about Roswell.
I tell you what I find hilarious is that in 1947, they immediately put out in the paper that a flying saucer has been recovered. They redact it and say it's a weather balloon. And then in 2023, they're blaming UFOs on balloons, even still to this day. So I just find
That's
that
true.
kind of humorous.
It
Bob,
continues to work.
I know it continues to convince people, but maybe not to the degree it used to. I will say that. So we're speaking of Mr. Robert Bob Salas, witness to the famous Malmstrom UFO incident in Montana. Bob, besides Roswell and besides your incident in Montana at Malmstrom Air Force Base, are there any other UFO incidents that you find particularly intriguing?
Yeah, of course. In 1966, there was another incident at Minot Air Force Base. Again, all 10 missiles were shut down during a UFO incident. The primary witness right now is Dave Shindelli, who's also spoken to Arrow and given his testimony. And there are living witnesses that will support him if they come forward. 1968, again, Minot Air Force Base, a B-52 crew, an entire crew. Primary witness there is Brad Runyon, Brad Runyon, who lives near you in Kentucky, actually drew a picture of what he saw when his B-52, he was a co-pilot, flew over a launch facility again at Minot and was able to sketch drawing of that object. It had a strange shape, but that was later confirmed by a general officer. They got debriefed, the entire B-52 crew. This is very well documented. Very well documented. All the crew members have been interviewed. So there have been many. If you go to my YouTube page and look for it, there is we gave a 2-hour presentation in October of 2021 of many incidents involving UFOs over nuclear facilities, starting with 1945 over facility in Washington, Hanford nuclear facility, which was producing plutonium at the time. Navy pilots intercepted UFOs over that facility. So, but I've got many, many examples.
We might have one more for you. We have a listener here named Stephen Bishop who said he had an experience. Was an Air Force security police specialist working high-level security on the big nukes out at the Great Plains. So we got to get the rest of that story from you, Stephen. Keep typing. Keep typing what happened. We want to know.
Absolutely. And we had several listeners that brought up the fascinating 1994 Zimbabwe school children event.
Right. Exactly.
Which was really fascinating. It continues to be in the news too. And a lot of those folks are adults now, working professionals, and they're continuing to speak about it. And what's amazing to me is they just have not ever deviated from their story. The principal backs them up, teachers. It's pretty fascinating. And you're talking about an entire classroom of school children of varying ages. So I tell you, an incident we're fascinated by and a person we're fascinated by, Bob, is another Bob Lazar in Area 51. What's your hot take on?
I'm up in the air about that. From my understanding is, I don't know that Mr. Lazar has provided enough evidence to back up his story. I've heard, part of his story. I haven't gone into too many details, but I don't know that he's got enough backup to support it sufficiently. But I'm open to that.
Oh, absolutely. It's certainly a mysterious place. And speaking of another mysterious place, there's another, which, by the way, Roswell is not too far from Area 51, but another very mysterious place. It's not too far from Area 51 either, and that is Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah, Skinwalker is very interesting. I read the book written by, I forget who. At any rate, a lot of strange things have happened there, and I think it's now owned by another gentleman, Brandon Fugel, right? And he has provided a lot of video evidence, I think, and testimonials from other people. So, that story is very interesting. Why is it happening there? I don't know, but that's a very interesting subject. So I'm intrigued by it.
Bob, we have some listeners that want to know how can they find your YouTube channel.
Okay, I think my YouTube moniker is Giant Head 3. Giant Head 3.
Thank you. Now, Bob, we were talking about just a little while ago with the orb video when CJ and we were watching this live, and we instantly said, "Oh, the Mosul orb." What's your take on? He's certainly a divisive, controversial figure, but Jeremy Corbell.
I don't know that I want to get into personality discussions. I've met Jeremy. I will say, I think he's associated with people that are what I call the Bigelow crowd or the Bigelow gang. To me, Bob Bigelow is an interesting character because he's been working with the government in secret for a long, long time, I think, with contracts and providing them with information. He's the one that actually got Skinwalker Ranch. Harry Reid, well, Skinwalker Ranch, yeah, he owned that. But he's the one that got Harry Reid interested in setting up ATIP after someone from DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, requested it. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. So it's hard to get my hands around.
Oh, for sure. And we really appreciate you joining us tonight, Bob. And I just have two more quick hot takes for you. We talked about this off air before we went on air tonight, but what's your hot take on cattle mutilations?
Very real. Cattle mutilations are a big mystery, and they are associated with UFO sightings. There have been many, many reports of people seeing UFOs in and around the areas of cattle mutilations. There's a very good book called Mystery Stalks the Prairie by Keith Wolverton, Wolverton, I think. And that, I think, is, if you're really interested in that subject, try to read that book. I know the government also had a contract with the sheriff's office in Montana to study this for the government, study cattle mutilation, and Department of Agriculture.
Oh, very interesting. All right. And my last one for you tonight, Bob. This man has been on our show more than once now, and he just co-wrote a paper with the head of AARO, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, detailing how the Earth could be being seeded by alien motherships. And he's currently looking for extraterrestrial objects in the ocean through private funding. What's your take on Avi Loeb?
Avi Loeb is a very brilliant scientist, Harvard astronomer, as I understand it. What he's trying to do is get sensors installed. I think he's already got them installed at Harvard. I think he might have trouble getting UFOs to fly over the sensors, but
right.
he is working hard to do that, to find a scientific way. So I wish him well. I did work with Avi for a little while on his project, but decided to move on. But I admire his work.
Yeah, he Skinwalker Ranch has definitely tried to collaborate with Avi Loeb, but he's a little skeptical that they're so highly publicized. He's a little worried about, the percent chance of pranksters and people knowing where they're at and messing with them. So I don't know if I think he's just going to keep his test sites in secret there.
Right.
Some of our listeners are curious to know about your interactions, or have you met? And I believe we were talking about her before we came on air. Linda, is it Moulton Howe?
Yes.
Linda Moulton Howe.
Yeah, she's
so
terrific.
They're curious to know if you've met her.
Oh, absolutely. She's a good friend. I consider her a good friend. She was the one that brought me on the Art Bell show in 1996, and that's the first time I went on radio to talk about my stories. So I owe her a debt of gratitude. But she's researched. She's done a lot of good research on many, many aspects of the phenomenon, and I have nothing but respect for Linda.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for answering all of our questions and our listeners' questions and coming on the show with us. Before we sign out for good, you've shared so much with us in terms of things that have happened to you and stories that you've heard, and the importance of getting the word out there, of speaking your truth, of not being fearful to do so. What do you think is the most important takeaway for our listeners who might be skeptical about the existence of UFOs?
Yeah, do your homework. Don't just accept what people say. There's plenty of great books out there. Roswell, a couple of great books. One was written by Stan Friedman, another one by Don Schmidt, Tom Carey. You could start there. That's a good start. But there are plenty of very respectable researchers that have gone before me. And like I said, if you're really interested in this subject, and everyone should be, do some research and make your own judgments on things.
Wonderfully stated. Okay, Tim, any further questions?
I did have, I guess, one more thing, if you don't mind, Bob. What's your thoughts on Dr. Hynek and Project Blue Book? We've actually encountered him in unexpected ways on this show with other people.
Well, as you know, Dr. Hynek was hired by the Air Force really to help them with disinformation initially. And then I'm going to give some credit to Dr. James McDonald, who was a scientist and atmospheric scientist. But he's the one that went to Hynek and showed him a lot of evidence that convinced Hynek that he shouldn't be playing ball with the Air Force. Really, he should be doing, like I said, his own research. And Hynek later became very much an advocate of the UFO reality. Again, he became a great researcher. So yeah, a lot of support for what Hynek did later on.
Right. And Bob, looking into the future of ufology, what's your hopes or expectations for the study of UFOs and what's going to be revealed to us through the military or the government? Are there any specific milestones or breakthroughs that you anticipate or hope to see?
You know, we've already made some great breakthroughs. I was getting very frustrated during those 29 years that nothing would ever really happen. But just the fact that Arrow has now interviewed, I think, at least 12 or more witnesses, and those are official records now, historical records, is a big plus, because now the Congress can demand to see those and hopefully release some of those to the public because, for example, my interview was not classified. Neither was that of David Schindele and other witnesses, showing the connection between UFOs and nukes. So I'm very encouraged that things are changing. Now, whether or not, how long, and whether or not we're going to get information like what our government has been doing as far as what they've learned from recovered craft, which I know that they've recovered and been studying and actually built simulations of those craft and flown them. I know that's happened. So whether or not the government will release or reveal that to the public is something we're going to have to press for. We're going to have to really push for. Anybody who's listening to this show, just know that this phenomenon is very real. It's very complex, and you can help by educating yourself and then becoming a public advocate for public disclosure.
Excellent. Well, we are endlessly grateful to you for your time, for your work, for your insight, sharing with us. Thank you to our listeners who tuned in live and shared your comments and questions. We are grateful to you as well. If you have any stories to share with us, if you've had experiences, please do send them our way. You can find us on all social media. Head to our website, allthingsunexplained.com. I officially have my own Instagram page after Tim pressing for 3 years now for me to get one. So wait, what is it? The Unexplained CJ?
The Unexplained CJ.
I don't even know, but please send me your stories. I would love to hear from you. And yeah, stay happy, stay strange, keep listening to All Things Unexplained.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
You bet.
Good night, everybody.
Sure.
You've been listening to All Things Unexplained. If you liked this podcast, please do give us a 5-star rating and leave us a review. If you would like to hear more All Things Unexplained, be sure to follow us wherever you listen to your podcasts. Our show depends on the support of listeners like you. You can support the show by visiting our Linktree account at linktree.com/ATU podcast. If you can't get enough of us, please check us out at allthings-unexplained.com. A special thanks to our producer, director, sound mixer, editor, and the man who wears far too many hats. No, seriously, he has a lot of hats. Dr. Tim Mounts. Without you, we couldn't keep the lights on. Thanks for listening to All Things Unexplained.